Week 11 in the books. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here for another Sunday morning edition call-in show. We'll take your calls a little bit later. Want to get to the Ole Miss game and a historic monumental win for the Rebels, defeating Georgia 28-10. So remember everything we said all week leading up to this game about how same quarterback, some of the same skill position players, speed, athleticism, pretty much on par last year between Ole Miss and Georgia, but it was in the trenches, getting beat up front, offensively and defensively. Georgia here, Ole Miss here. It's like they flipped jerseys in 1 year because Ole Miss won the game because they were the more physical football team. 28-10, huge win for the Rebels. They stay in the playoff chase. Got Leanne Herring here to discuss it. So, Leanne, you were at the game, and so that must have been phenomenal. And we want to remind everyone that Leanne and I get together every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time for our Ole Miss live show. So,
well, we were going to do our post game yet last night, Mark. But man, it was just a historic night. I don't think that Keith Carter and the rest of the Ole Miss athletic department are going to mind those fines that they're going to get, because not one but two goal post downs were making their way eventually through Oxford last night. Again, like you said, there wasn't anything that was new that Lane Kiffin and his staff did last night. What they did was they played to their strengths. They've taken the last couple of weeks. I know that we've talked about, the losses at Kentucky, the loss at home to Kentucky, and then the loss on the road to LSU. But I do believe that really had shaped how Ole Miss has played on the backstretch and what we saw last night. We talked about winning games in the trenches. And last night, not only did our defensive front command, because there was a couple of moments, I'm sure you were watching the game, that it could have easily shifted the momentum back towards Georgia. Early on, there were a few key plays there that it looked like Georgia was going to do and dominate. But again, I think what we saw from this Ole Miss team was, for once, that they handled business from the jump. They stood on business, like I kept saying last night, throughout the course of this game, because they took care of business, handled business, stood on business from the jump. They handled it in the front end, and they closed in the back end. And I think that is something that Ole Miss hasn't really been the most consistent about. But I think after those losses, it really has they turned a new page. Jackson Dart, like I said, when we saw it at that second quarter, that second half during the Oklahoma game, and each week, I think what we've seen is now they've carried over what they need to play to. And we saw it full force here against Georgia. But again, kudos to I said it from the jump, the unsung heroes. The offensive line and the defensive front in this game really were the game changers, and they complemented well. But again, there wasn't something new coming out of the playbook. We did what we did, but we did it at a stronger point. And I do believe that, like I say every week, when everybody does their job, great things can happen with this Ole Miss Rebels team. And it definitely showed last night in Oxford with the historic win against the Georgia Bulldogs.
So, Leanne, this is what is remarkable to me on a list of items that are remarkable, like 50 things. So this game gets started, and just the psychology of sports being that Georgia doesn't lose. They've won 52 consecutive games against teams not named Alabama. 52 straight. They won this game by 5 touchdowns last year. These athletes all know this. They know the history. They know what's happened. They know what happened when they lined up last year. And right out of the gate, Jackson Arnold gets sacked, throws a pick, gets injured. And so Georgia's got a 21-yard field to get the first touchdown of the game. So right out of the gate, everything's going against Ole Miss. Quarterback's injured, short field, easy touchdown for Georgia, sack, pick. It doesn't look good. But the one indication I took away from that early exchange is that even though everything swung in Georgia's way early, that it took Georgia 7 plays to score a touchdown from 21 yards out. So the Ole Miss defense only gave up 3 yards per play. So that was an indicator of things to come, that it was going to be tough sledding for the Georgia rushing attack, in which Ole Miss held them to about 2 yards or less per carry. So even out of the gate, even with that adversity, Ole Miss showed that they were going to be up to the challenge.
Exactly, and you brought it, and we talked about it again. That whole theme of adversity. Jackson Dart talked about, how we were early on, and adversity was here after those losses. How do you respond to adversity? And that's another good point. Like you said, it looked like everything was going to go, and Georgia was going to do typical things. I mean, right off the bat, those things happened, and everybody you could tell was all right. They're like, here we go. This is going to do Ole Miss things. But again, I think what another key thing that we saw was the response that Ole Miss handle this. And I think that in other situations, we've seen Ole Miss of the past not respond well to that, but they didn't do that. They didn't let Jackson Dart going out. They didn't let those things change the mentality. Because like we talk about it so much, we talk about the skill sets and the things that have to be done on the field that have to translate. But one of the other things in big games like this, like you said, Georgia never loses other than somebody in Alabama. So the way that the Rebels responded on the field, and they translated and didn't let those things that could have easily shifted the game, because we've seen it all throughout this season when teams look at Arkansas, perfect example, when Green went out last week, that whole offense just shut down. And granted, we didn't lose Dart that much, but there was definitely a shift in momentum right there. Ole Miss in the past, that could have easily been us, but last night we responded well to the fact that we could lose Jackson Dart. We didn't know what the case was. And here, Austin Simmons coming up, stepping, you got to give kudos and pats on to the back that kid. Not only did he come in a situation that he knew, this wasn't like him coming in when we were up or we were down. This was a key moment in how this game was going to change in either our favor. So Austin Simmons coming up there, and that drive that was just designed, that they called last night with him, was just, I think, one of the most beautiful drives I had seen. Like I said, I'm always a proponent of the run game, but again, we saw a young guy come in, step in a very tense situation, and stand on business, make things happen, and they stayed calm and collected. And I think that was another key point that the way the Rebels responded last night was a key component in them being consistent. Like I said, for once, they weren't playing catch up. They weren't handling business on the back nine. They stood on business in the front end, and they closed this game. And I really think, again, the last 2 weeks, we really seen them play a more complete. But also, if you notice, there was a lot more minimal mistakes. And I think that that's because the mentality, the composure. I think, this game, they knew what was on the line. And Jackson Dart, mentioned it. Every game they've been playing since those losses is a chance to play in the college football playoff, to still be in this conversation. So you got to understand, when you're in that mentality that every week you're playing like you're playing a playoff game, you play differently. And I think we've seen it here, and we saw it last night against, like I said, quite a hell of a win against Georgia. I mean, you couldn't have written a better script. And again, for Lane Kiffin, and this is a signature win in his career, and it just goes to show that the investment and the time and everything, even despite the losses, even despite the hard moments, they've gone out there and they've made necessary changes in order to get to this point, and it finally all came into fruition. And they're still, but they're, as historic and great this win was, and the steps they took forward and how they played and they handled and controlled this game, and pushed Georgia up against the wall, because last year Georgia had us against the wall. And like you said, when you were, introducing us in the show, the jerseys were flipped, the flip the script. I mean, the Rebels went out here and manhandled the dogs in the trenches. But again, it's because, everybody did their job, and they took care of it early on. They took, despite the obstacles and the little things that could have easily shifted this game back in Georgia favor. The Rebels responded very well by translating it on the field and making things happen and making big plays, especially, like I said, in the trenches. And I think this is one of the best performances by our offensive line, to be able to hold and be better at protection, and let Jackson Dart be cleaner in the pocket to do Jackson Dart things, and even with Austin Simmons. But you got to give it to them. They've struggled. They've had those moments, but they played a stronger game than they had a long time against a very, difficult Georgia defensive front.
Folks, you see on the banner there where you can follow Leanne on a regular basis there on Twitter /X, and you can follow all of her writing, all of her work on her various media platforms. So again, follow Leanne right there. Check in with us every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, and you can do that for the next few weeks right here. But we've got an Ole Miss channel. We want you to subscribe there, lock it in on our Ole Miss channel. And again, Wednesdays, 2 p.m. Eastern time. So you hit on the next remarkable point and again, we're still very early in the game. Georgia lands a punch after Ole Miss gives it up. They're up 7-0. And then Austin Simmons has to come out as he's either a sophomore or a redshirt freshman. I don't know if they redshirted him last year, but he was a true freshman last year in 2023. He's thrown 24 passes this year. Those were all in garbage time when the game was out of hand. Didn't matter, just getting reps. So he comes in against Georgia, down 7-0, leads a 10-play, 75-yard drive. And what I found interesting there is obviously Lane Kiffin's an extremely intelligent offensive mind. So he had to have been, in a sense, determining what can I do with him and what am I limited to? What situations do I need to put him in? What plays does he run well? Because I don't want to put him in a bad place. I don't want to put us in a bad place while we're figuring out what's going on with Jackson. But with a 75-yard drive, 10 plays, they threw it 6 times. It's not like he tried to hide him. He didn't go just run, and we'll try to hide him. They threw it 6 times. It wasn't a bunch of dump off passes either. They threw it a little bit downfield, some intermediate routes. So he showed some trust to Austin Simmons in a game that they're already down a touchdown to be able to jumpstart the offense and get them going.
No, exactly right. And I think that also speaks volume because again, Lane didn't know this. He said he was talking about at the press conference. Jackson Dart said, I didn't think I was going to be out, but Lane Kiffin had to prepare his team and mentally get them ready, in case Jackson was going to be out or this game was going to have to ride for a while on Austin Simmons' back. And I think showing that confidence. But again, he did not try to make Simmons into Jackson Dart and operate him that way. He played to what he knew was going to be effective, and we saw it. And like you said, he was very meticulous on the ground. But again, we saw a kid that made some key passes and key components, and that was just a well orchestrated drive. But I think that Lane taking that confidence in Simmons and letting him carry that team for even a short time really helped. And I think that just built trust because again, you don't know what the situation is going to be. You don't know how long Jackson Dart was going to go out. So this may be your guy, and you have to have confidence in him. And I think that's it showed. And I think that drive was very key. And you talk about some of the veteran guys were talking about it afterwards, how they were congratulating because thankfully, we got Jackson Dart back in that situation because, in games like that, we've seen I said it already. We've seen the momentum quickly shift when you lose your quarterback. And it's not because Simmons isn't capable. We saw it last night. We know it's not capable, but we've seen it, with Texas, at Oklahoma. When you lost your top guy, there's a little bit of a mental shift. There's a little bit of shift on how you're going to operate because this is the guy that you're comfortable with. You know how it's going to go. You can kind of run. You have that chemistry. And Simmons hasn't had enough plays, like you said, when he got those times, it was garbage time. We already knew how the game was going to go, but one wrong move could have easily shifted had Simmons not been able to capitalize this drive, and it would have gone a different way. But again, he was able to capitalize. He kept the momentum going, and I believe that this was a very key drive that helped mentally keep this offense in the game, despite not knowing what's going on with their quarterback. They still played given the situation, and like I said, again, another key theme that I believe outside, just the obvious of how it was played and how they translated was how they responded. Because again, they could have easily responded in an Ole Miss fashion, but no, they responded knowing like, hey, we're gonna take initiative here. We're gonna control this game. It's not going how we're most uncomfortable with. We're in an uncomfortable situation, but we're gonna make it work. And I think that whole belief in that mentality really rallied, and it allowed Ole Miss not to break down or shut down, but to continue to move forward.
And then Jackson Dart comes back. We didn't know whether he was going to be able to make it back, but he obviously has an ankle injury. But when he had to take off and run, when he had to move around in the pocket, I didn't see any ill effects of that. He seemed to be Jackson Dart of every other day.
No, exactly. And I think too, like when you're hearing him talk afterwards, he goes, I didn't think I was going to be out. I didn't have any plans of staying out. I think regardless if the injury that he was going to play if he could. And obviously we saw that. And I think that obviously too, not saying that he wasn't injured or he wasn't hurt, but I think Jackson Dart knew that he needed to stay in this game. And if Lane felt comfortable, if the coaching staff felt comfortable, like he continue on, that they were going to leave him in the game because I think that adrenaline rush and everything, when you're in that and you're in his position and you know that there's a lot riding on this game. I think we saw it last night when we got to see him be like Jackson Dart. But again, this was not a new offense that came about. This was not a new defensive thing. Lane Kiffin didn't have to do craziness. What they played well last night was they had great response. Talk about our special teams too. I said that in games like this, that special teams was going to come big into play. And I'm trying to pull up the stat. I have it all written down here. 5 field goals, 65-yard punts in big spots. So like I said, this win was not just won on the backs of our defense. It was elite or Jackson Dart and some key players. This win took everybody. And I think that this is what made us finally over the hump is, like I said, we handled business on the front end so we could close on the back end. So we weren't trying to play catch up. So we weren't trying to play hurry up. How we responded in situations was a key component. I think that this was probably one of the strongest performances as far as being able to respond and adjust when things weren't going your way and being uncomfortable. I think Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin and his staff did a really good job with the play calling, and Pete Golding obviously on the defensive side of the ball, outstanding. I mean, but this game was just won on the backs of every single player and every single coach out there because everybody did their job and they did it to the best that they could. And we saw it last night, and I really think that the way we responded was a huge, huge component in us being able to close out this game and not even keep it close with Georgia. I mean, there was just a commanding presence. I think that we just were able to outcondition them for once. Like I said, last year, it was a totally different story. But again, I think, like I said on our show, last week, Georgia, I believe, was a turning point for us. And I think Lane Kiffin realized that we needed to go out there and recruit size and power. And we did that. And it made a difference in a year because now, we came back home, and we made a historic run because we went out there and we fixed things. And I think that, we've used these games, these losses, but we've used the Arkansas game. We've used all these games to grow each week. I think we finally took the Band-Aids off and they ripped them off. And we finally, instead of just putting Band-Aids on everything, we've made adjustments that are being fixed. And we're not just putting, like I said, we're not just putting Band-Aids, we're fixing the problems little by little, and again, and I think too, the losses early on, nobody wants to win, but I really do believe had Ole Miss continued and we not have a loss coming into this game, I think that we wouldn't have fixed some of the things that we needed to fix to be able to handle Georgia. I think it would have been a different storyline had we not had this game coming on to loss and not had so much riding on the line. I think we would have played a lot differently and maybe let our guard down. And we could have been talking about another, Georgia win. Georgia does Georgia things, Ole Miss does Ole Miss things. But again, I think that those losses, and then also, just a momentum shift on the part of the mentality of the players, it definitely showed. And it definitely, like I said, I can't not mention about all this talk and all this game, historic win. Talk about a win on the recruiting trail last night, seeing all the recruits and getting to kind of get their pregame thoughts. We have a lot of them that we'll be talking about, obviously, on the show, some surprise visits. Everyone, of course, was Deuce Knight was a quarterback, Mississippi kid. We've been recruiting for a long time, was a long time Notre Dame commit, and then currently is committed to Auburn. But he made a surprise visit last night on the sideline. So like I said, talk about another strong win on the recruiting trail. I mean, you couldn't have set a better stage, for the fan base here in Oxford as far as that win, but you couldn't have set a better stage if you were willing to really see what you can do at Ole Miss as far as a future prospect or a kid that might be flipping, another great stage, like I said. So it wasn't only a win on the turf for Ole Miss last night and Lane Kiffin and his staff, but a huge win on the recruiting trail. So it's going to be exciting, I guess, now going into 3 weeks up until early signing day, so we'll have a lot to talk about.
Breakaway 34, thanks for checking in. Appreciate you. Love this new Voice of College Football Ole Miss channel. Subscribed and hotty toddy. Let's go. Lane Train and Dart. Thanks for being here. Everybody else, we got an Ole Miss channel. Features our show with Leanne each and every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time and also post game. So please join us there because we won't always be here if you're watching us here on the main channel. So we want to get you all moved over to the Ole Miss channel. And again, we get together every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. So this, again, just stands out to me is that Georgia scored one touchdown and they were given a 21-yard field and then the rest of the game. And Ole Miss just clearly dominated on the defensive side in the first half. They only gave up 20 rushing yards. They shut down the Georgia offense. They come out at halftime, and Georgia, they've got a champion's fight. They've got a champion's spirit. They came out, they changed up the offense. They ran a lot of misdirection plays. They took advantage of Ole Miss's aggressiveness. They started to move the ball. Leanne, they had 3 consecutive drives, Georgia, where they went 70, 64, and 46 yards. So they started to move the ball. But when it got down into the red zone, then Ole Miss was knocking the ball loose. You had 2 fumbles caused, one by Xavier Harris. Walter Nolan recovered that one. 2 on Nick Frazier. Even when Ole Miss made mistakes, and we've seen the penalties show up a number of times, like they had a stop with about 7 minutes left in the game where Georgia still had a fighting chance. It's 22-10. They're moving the ball, but then Ole Miss puts the clamps on them, stops the drive. But they sack Carson Beck on 3rd down. They get the fumble. They get the face mask, though, when it's picked up by Cash Jones, and you get a face mask and on Trey Washington, and that gives the ball back to Georgia, gives them another opportunity, but Ole Miss has the resiliency and the fight just to hang with it, stop them again. And this just repeated over and over where Ole Miss, just the defense was just first rate throughout the night.
Again, like I said, I think that the defensive front, we knew that defense wins championships, but again, this game was going to be a game that we knew was going to have to be won in the trenches, and I think the defensive unit knew that they were going to have to continue it playing at the elite level, especially against offense. A Georgia offense that has been well, but once again, Georgia has had trouble running the ball. I mean, and we saw it in struggles. And like you said, even with those long drives, I mean, I was watching it from the top and you could just, it's interesting the perspectives when you watch a game from a sideline versus watching, calling it from a coach's level or on the box level, because I mean, you couldn't get through that defensive front of Ole Miss. They weren't going to give them an opportunity. Like you said, even when mistakes were made, there was somebody on that defensive unit ready to capitalize to make sure that they weren't going to give Georgia an opportunity to get there. And if they were going to get in the red zone, like you said, that they were going to stop. I've seen this defensive unit play aggressively, but I mean, there was just another level. If you could even imagine this defensive unit having even a higher level of aggression and determination to stop an offense. It was last night. I mean, there was no moving them. You would have thought there was a brick wall of China right there, just in front of that with that defensive front, because they just didn't allow them they weren't going to allow Georgia to get there. And you could see the Georgia struggles, Carson Beck, with the run game and everything. And like you said, I think Kirby thinking those adjustments offensively, let's try something a little bit different. But, the run game in this situation was a tough one for Georgia to try to, even with trying to make momentum, because you're going against a defensive front that was already elite, that was already, trying to do something. But again, like I said, they reached a whole new level of aggression and determination last night.
All right, there it is for the Rebels moving forward. Of course, they've got the game against Florida after a bye week, and they've got the rivalry game, the Egg Bowl game against Mississippi State. They're going to be a heavy favorite in both of those games, and we will talk more about Ole Miss and Florida and the bye week and licking some wounds, getting healthy, getting ready for the stretch drive toward the college football playoff, hopefully for Ole Miss. All right, Leanne, appreciate you being here. And again, we want to make sure that everyone knows where to find Leanne and that we are here doing the Ole Miss Show each and every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So, Leanne, anything else that you want to add before we wrap this one up?
Well, I think, like you said, you hit on all the points. We'll have a lot. I think the biggest thing, aside from the bye week, we'll take this week to rest, but not rest too much, because we got to stay on our toes for Georgia. I mean, I'm sorry. Well, we already stayed on our toes for Georgia, but looking forward to Florida. Another road win. We should win that one. You always say you should, but again, the state of DJ Lagway, he could very well be back for that. Florida's trying to keep momentum going, and there's so much at stake like that. So we can't let our guard down by any means. But I think the most interesting thing, how much up the rankings in the CFP will Ole Miss go? Are they going to let us? Are they going to let us make some movement? Or are they going to keep us down? But nonetheless, you can't disregard a historic program win, and probably, like I said, a strong career win for Lane Kiffin. I think it's finally shown that when you invest and you put hard work into this, and I think that's what he's done since he's got there. I mean, each year, they've been knocking on the door, but again, they handled business on the front end, and they closed last night. And it was a heck of a night. Like I said, it was just, you couldn't have painted a better picture for Lane Kiffin and this team that has been historically known, even before Lane got here, is just winning parties. Well, they not only won the party last night in the stands, they won in the Grove, they won the party last night in a big way against the Turf. So we'll talk about it all on Wednesday. Have recruiting news for you. And as always, hotty toddy, go Rebs.
Leanne, good to see you. We'll see you on Wednesday.
See you on Wednesday.
Leanne Herring. And again, you can see her Twitter handle down below. We've got the Ole Miss Live Show coming up Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And we do typically Ole Miss live post game right after the game, but wanted to get to that this morning. All right. Now we're wide open for all college football talk. We've left the link in the chat. We appreciate everyone who left it again in the chat. Michael, thank you for that. And want to remind everyone that we'll take your calls. And I'll make a statement about Georgia in all this, because it seems to be a bit of a shock that they went to Ole Miss. And this was not a nail biter, 31-28. They got manhandled in this game. So what does this tell us about Georgia? Well, it tells us a whole lot. It tells us that 2024 Georgia is not 2021, 2, or 3 Georgia. It may be 2019 or 2020 Georgia, when they were extremely good, multi-talented, super impressive in ways, but lacking in some other ways, and not capable of winning a national championship. We do have one data point that tells us that Georgia can go to Texas and dominate Texas and win comfortably. But we have a bunch of other data points that tell us that Georgia is going to struggle against Florida and Kentucky and get shellacked by Ole Miss, even when they're given a 21-yard field to score the lead touchdown. They get an injured quarterback on the other side. They get a sack and a pick that leads to a short field and a quick touchdown against a team that they beat by 5 touchdowns last year. And then they looked miserable the rest of the night. And I know Carson Beck's going to take a huge hit for this, and he shouldn't. Carson Beck is the least of this team's problems. This team could not block, and their defense got pushed around, and their secondary is not Georgia's standard. Are they dead? They look it, yes, but this is college football, and this is Georgia. Kirby Smart, after the game, did what every other coach in college football does in these situations. What do college football coaches do? If his team would have gone into Ole Miss and won by 3 scores, he would be suppressing the praise. He would be suppressing the talk of, we are dominant, we're the best team in the country, this is who we are, this is going to be an easy road. No. He'd be suppressing all that and talking about everything that they have to work on. But what happened? They got kicked in the mouth. They got dragged around the field. They lost by 18 points, and it was worse than that. So what did he do after the game? He said, okay, this was not good. However, this is not the end of the road. This is a long, long journey. This is a long, long fight. It's a marathon. This was one game. We have things to work on, but we're in for the long haul and the long fight. He's basically telling his team, don't give up. We're still in this. We can still rally. Is he correct? Well, we will see. If this was another coach in another team, I would give them less chance to rally and to make a championship run. But since it's Georgia, since they have the best roster in the country in terms of metrics, not necessarily the best team in the country, the best roster in the country, 1 through 105, and Kirby Smart's arguably the best coach in college football. I think everyone would rank him as the best in college football. Are they dead? Should we kick dirt on the grave? Well, you can go ahead and do that. I will just say that I am concerned at a 7 or 8 level, because at this point, yeah, this is too many poor performances to say that Georgia is a national championship caliber team. They are not. They are not playing like it in any such way. Therefore, most of the time, these early indicators through the month of October into November, they play out exactly the way they have the entire season. It's difficult to get things jump started and to be somebody different in late November and December than you were the entire season. This is a very talented team that's really good, that nobody would really want to play. But are they one of the best teams in the country? No, they are not playing like it. Are they one of the 10 best teams in the country? Yeah. Do they have the potential to get it together? Yes. Is Carson Beck the problem? No. He's not playing great football, but he's not the problem. There are scads of issues that they have with this Georgia football team beyond Carson Beck. Is he playing great? No. Is he the problem? He's about the 5th most significant problem that they have. All right. So my thoughts on Georgia right there. The SEC race is crazy. We will have to post a video this week, much like we did last week, but now we've got more information, of course, in the bank to produce a scenarios video on the SEC championship, because again, it's crazy. Texas and Texas A&M have 1 loss. Everybody else in the conference basically has 2 losses. Alabama, LSU. We count out LSU, and they looked awful last night. They have 2 losses in the conference. They could still play in the conference championship game. Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, on and on and on and on and on and on and on. All right. I guess Texas, Texas A&M, and Tennessee all have 1 loss. The other group of teams, including Missouri, 2 losses. 9 teams in the race still. All right, let's go to the phone lines. We got Michael on the line. Michael, how you doing today?
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Boy, I was really wanting to get back on there last night because I wanted to rip some people last night.
Wanted to rip some people. You can't rip them today?
Well, I can, but I don't think they're on there. One of them is the real.
Okay.
What did he
say? Yeah.
Talk about how IU can forget it and not making the playoff. If I'm not mistaken, I caught the tail end of it.
He said if they don't perform well against Ohio State.
Okay.
That was the premise of his. He said if they beat Ohio State, or if they play well against Ohio State, then forget everything that he said. But he said if they get trounced by Ohio State, that they don't have the resume that the top teams in the SEC have. And I would have to agree with him.
Okay, but still though, give them IU schedule then. Would they all be 10-0 right now?
Who are we talking about? Would Alabama be 10-0? Yes.
Yeah, would everybody in the SEC that had IU schedule, I promise you they would be 10-0 right now. And they would be doing the same thing?
About 7 of them would be.
Who wouldn't? Okay, who wouldn't be from the SEC?
Who would?
Who wouldn't?
Would not be 10-0?
Yeah. You said 17.
Florida, Mississippi State.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the teams that.
Well, we will never know. And I'm not saying that there aren't teams that Indiana has played that aren't capable in the right situation of winning a game. Michigan could beat Texas A&M on the right day, but they're not better than Texas A&M. Texas A&M is substantially, significantly, decidedly better than Michigan this year. Could Michigan beat them in a given day? Absolutely, they could.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that everyone would absolutely be 10-0, but most likely Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee,
LSU,
Texas,
Texas A&M,
LSU,
Texas A&M, Ole
Texas
Miss,
A&M, Ole Miss would be 10-0.
maybe Missouri.
Because those teams are all roughly at least as good as Indiana, maybe better. We don't know. We can only estimate. And I'm not taking anything away from Indiana. I've tried to give them all sorts of credit. And they can't control their schedule. They can't control their Big Ten schedule. They unfortunately scheduled no one in the non-conference. And I got to think that Indiana had no thought whatsoever when they were scheduling games non-conference for 2024 about making the college football playoff. So when they were scheduling the likes of Charlotte and FIU, they did that to make a bowl game.
Yeah. But no, and that was a good, I mean, yeah, that was what you called a gut check win for IU yesterday.
Yeah, that was. They played extremely well on offense for most of the first half. They racked up a couple touchdown drives in which their skill position players played really well, and Curtis Rourke got the ball to them, and they had Michigan off balance. Yeah. And then they got obliterated, actually, in the second half offensively. Their offensive numbers were terrible. Yeah. They averaged less than 1 yard per play in the second half.
I think it was like 1.9 or something like that. But no, defense, if I was Cincinnati, my less game ball would go to the defense yesterday.
Yes, the defense was excellent, but they were playing Michigan.
Yeah.
Michigan's offense is terrible.
What is Adam thinking that Oregon can't get it done this year?
I don't know. You would have to speak with Adam.
No, because he talked to you about it last night.
I know he did. I don't agree with him. Now, do I believe that Oregon's the best team in the country, or would I put money on Oregon over, let's say, Ohio State or Texas or Alabama? No, but I think they're one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean, most likely and stuff like that. But it seems like the better they play each week, the more better they're getting and stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't see any of the game against Maryland, so I don't know how well they played. Maryland's horrible, and they won by 3 touchdowns, but it was a close game at halftime.
Yeah, same thing with like Colorado. Nice bounce back, come back win for them yesterday. Is Colorado the odds-on favorite right now? You think to win the Big 12 as good as they're playing?
I don't know if they're, to take your term, you know what that means, an odds-on favorite?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say that they're the odds-on favorite. I'd say they're the favorites. They're playing the best, and they don't need to have the best record. They just need to get to the championship game. And BYU had no business winning that game last night. I shouldn't say that. They had no business winning that game the way it stood in the final 10 minutes. I turned it on after I did this show, and there was 10 minutes left, and they won the game because they had the ball with about 90 seconds left at their own 5 or 10 yard line, and Utah was kicking their rear ends. They were annihilating their offensive line. They were covering their receivers. It was a complete train wreck, and BYU got bailed out. The game was over, and BYU got bailed out by a holding call downfield that had absolutely nothing to do with the play. I don't fault the refs. They're just calling the game. They can't make a decision that, oh, well, the quarterback had no chance to throw the ball over here. But the quarterback, while the holding was occurring, the quarterback was running for his life on the other side of the field and way back into the corner of the end zone. There was no chance he's throwing the ball to that dude. So it had no impact, the holding on the play, but it gave BYU new life. Suddenly they became a completely different team, and they chucked about 3 or 4 balls downfield, and suddenly they were in field goal range and won the game.
Yeah.
It was
Now,
remarkable.
yeah. Now, with IU having a bye, do you think that bye week's a good thing for IU right now? So they have the week off to get ready for Ohio State, or
I
do
would
you?
think it's a big advantage. Sure. They
Because
can
part of
game
me,
plan specifically for Ohio State for 2 weeks.
yeah, because part of me like this time of year would that be kind of a bad thing to have the bye this time of year? I mean, yeah, you want to do it for your injuries and stuff like that, though. But I mean, like, do you want to lose some of momentum though this time of year
Well,
though?
I don't know how much momentum they had offensively. They were terrible
Yeah.
outside of like 3 drives. They only had 240 yards of total offense yesterday.
Yeah. Yep. And this was the Michigan game. I kept saying this was going to be their trap game and stuff like that. It almost was. Got to give credit to Michigan for playing and stuff like that, though. But other than that, SMU, the cream of the crop for the ACC, or you still think it's going to be Clemson since Miami went down in flames yesterday?
Why would it not still be anybody's game?
Just the way they played yesterday, I thought. And I didn't see much of the game, though. But from one of the highlights I seen, it won a good game for Miami yesterday.
No, it wasn't at all. They lost to a team that plays 2 quarterbacks and just switch them back and forth, which I never think that that's a good game plan, but it was yesterday. And yeah, I watched that entire game, and Miami's not a great football team. They think they are, or certain people think they are, because they're extremely fun to watch and they're prolific on offense, but we're not playing 7-on-7. So their defense, their rush defense, Georgia Tech was missing its top 3 running backs. They have a 1,000-yard running back who ripped them for 83 yards on 3 plays, and then he got hurt. And they had their second string guy already out, and their third string guy got hurt in the first quarter. They were playing with their 4th string running back, and Haynes King, who's still partially injured, running them for over 100 yards. And they rushed for almost 300. Their rush defense is terrible.
Yeah. Do you think? Yeah, I know Purdue got whitewashed yesterday for a second time in 3 weeks and stuff like that, though. But do you think Ryan Day was trying to make a statement game, or do you think he called the dogs off there?
A statement?
Yeah.
I don't think. I don't think Ryan Day or Ohio State need to make statements against Purdue.
Well, I mean, I know. I mean, like run up to like the style game and stuff like that, though. But anyway, though, so
they played their backups in the 4th quarter to a certain extent.
Yeah, and I don't know what the deal is. Was that goal was Ryan Walters going for field goals instead of 4th and 1 year, like at the 2-yard line? I don't know. But anyway, it's gonna be an interesting game next week at Wrigley.
Is it?
Yeah, for Ohio State Northwestern.
Okay, if you say so.
No, it's just kind of weird watching them play at a major league stadium.
Oh, yeah, that's going to be interesting. Yes, I thought you were talking about the game itself.
No, I don't think. I think Ohio State will run roughshod and stuff like that, though. So, Michigan's 1 win away. Who they got next week, or they got to bye next week?
Michigan is a bye. Then they play Northwestern.
Oh, so they still got it. So most likely they'll end up getting to a bowl game.
Yes, they should.
And stuff like that. But no, kudos to UCLA.
Yeah. I was impressed with UCLA. I have been impressed with UCLA. And for everyone who made fun of Deshaun Foster near the beginning of the year, and I got to admit, I didn't make fun of him, but I thought it was very curious the way he presented himself at Big Ten Media Days. So he presented himself, and that was his coming out party in terms of the nation hearing him talk about his football team. And it looked like somebody just got him out of bed and asked him to speak on world peace or something. But that aside, that doesn't matter. He's doing a great job with his football team, and they have gotten so much better in the last month.
Yeah, because I was talking with the guy who does stuff for Learfield, who does like the scoreboard updates and stuff like that. We talk about, did his name Eric Clark ring a bell to you?
Eric who?
Clark.
Eric Clark.
Yeah.
No.
Because he brought it up during the because the last time it was played since like the 1986 Rose Bowl when Iowa and UCLA played. That was the first time they played since then.
Yeah. Are you talking
Or I
about
think
Eric Ball?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Sorry,
Okay.
I don't know why I'm
Yes.
thinking.
If you would have said the name Eric
Big
Ball,
Ball. Sorry about
yes,
that.
he's the star running back for UCLA back in the mid 80s and won the
Yeah.
Rose Bowl MVP.
Yeah, because I think he had like what 5 touchdowns against or he had 4 touchdowns against Iowa.
He ran for 220, 30 yards.
So, yeah.
Yep.
But the thing is, Troy Aikman won the quarterback then, was it?
No.
Who was it before Aikman?
Rick Neuheisel.
Okay, because was Aikman at Oklahoma then?
Aikman, so that was the 1985 season. Good call. Troy Aikman was at Oklahoma. I don't want to mess up the year. It might have been 86 that he was the starting quarterback at Oklahoma for the first couple games of the season. He got hurt, never played again at Oklahoma. They brought in Jamil Holloway, and the rest is history. And I can't remember if it makes more sense that was because his last year at UCLA was 88. He was in the 89 draft.
Yeah, number one pick.
He played at UCLA in 87 and 88. I don't know if he was a true freshman. Somebody would have to look that up for me, whether that was 85 or 86. I think it happened against Miami in 1985.
Okay. I wasn't sure and stuff like that. Now, are you one that thinks even though a team won and it was a close game, do you penalize them for playing a close game yesterday like they used to do back in the late 90s, drop teams that won close games?
For me, it's not about dropping teams. It's about evaluating the entire resume. So I hear this all the time with my top 25. Why'd you drop them? Why'd you drop them? Why'd you drop them? I'm not dropping them. Teams play different. Okay, let's say team A is number 5 in the country and team B is number 6 in the country. And team A, number 5 in the country, plays a 3-8 football team and they win by a field goal. Okay. Team B, number 6 in the country, beats Ohio State by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Would it not make sense that the resume, if it was extremely close going into that week, that the team that was ranked number 6 in the country would then have a much stronger resume? Therefore, they would go past team number 5 in the country.
Yeah, I agree. I was just wondering basically because where you had IU last week in your top 25 and stuff like that, or would you expect it to be a close game yesterday, or do you kind of think it was going to be like what IU did most of the season?
Oh, I thought it was going to be close. I took Michigan and the points. Yeah.
Nice. But no, I'm wondering, yeah, because I was thinking, talking to a couple people, and when they said like 14.5, you better take Michigan on this one. Because, like, I didn't think IU was going to be able to cover and stuff like that. But, yeah, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I should have clipped off every time I said that that Vegas line was way overinflated. I think you were on here with me and other people a week ago when we first got a hint of that line, and I said, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, pretty much Vegas made back their money that they lost all season with IU yesterday.
Well, every time somebody makes a statement about what Vegas makes and what they don't make, how do we know?
True.
We don't know what the betting public's doing.
True. Just a general team. But how surprised was you about LSU and Alabama last night?
How surprised?
Yeah.
I was slightly surprised. I thought that Alabama was going to win handily, but I don't know that I didn't pick a score, but I picked them to cover the spread. I thought they'd win by maybe 14.
Yeah, I was thinking around the same score, same stuff like that. No, I was just wondering stuff like that. Nice win for Ole Miss yesterday.
Oh, that was a great win.
Yep. So do you think Georgia's pretty much all but done with the college football playoff this year?
Well, I said right before I took your call that by the way they're playing, they look done. They're not a competitive team at a championship level. Am I going to kick dirt on their grave? No. I've seen too many teams that looked marginal in early November and had a bad game be able to come back. And we're not even talking about teams that have won national championships and have national championship winning coaches. So I'm not going to count their season over. Does it look good? No. Because they keep throwing these. If they were rolling along, if they were Oregon, if they had been playing like Oregon the last 7-8 games, and then they had a game like this, I would say, okay, they had a bad night. But Georgia's been playing like this a number of times this season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm sure that's going to be on your game radar for next week. Tennessee go down to Athens.
Yes. If I could only watch one game next week without looking at the schedule, I think that would be the one.
Mm-hmm. But no, that's what I was asking if they pretty much done, because from here on out, it's pretty much elimination for like Alabama, Ole Miss. Let's see who else.
But look
Georgia.
at who teams are playing, though. Alabama has Oklahoma and Auburn.
Yeah.
Ole Miss has Florida and Mississippi State. Georgia has, well, they got this Tennessee game. So
yeah.
And Georgia, and the way they're playing, Georgia Tech's not going to be a pushover.
Nah. Now is Georgia Tech bowl eligible now?
Yes.
All right. As Georgia. Another thing I'm trying to figure out is what happened with Castellanos from Boston College.
He was injured a few weeks ago.
I thought it said somebody he was out. It happened yesterday during the game or something.
Oh, well, maybe he got re-injured, because I know that he missed some time a few weeks ago. And I see that their backup quarterback led the win against Syracuse.
Yeah. But no, this year that the Big Ten finally climbs the hurdle and gets on top of the mountain.
The Big Ten?
Yeah.
Are you talking about winning a national championship?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know they did it. I know they did it last year. I guess this year.
Those are the reports. That's what's technically in the books right now.
Yeah.
We'll see if that holds.
Sure. But no, I mean, how are you ranking them in the SEC this year? Who are you giving a slight edge to?
Well, the SEC is a better conference top to bottom, but that doesn't matter at the top because there's only one team that's going to win the national championship.
Sure.
And I would give Ohio State and Oregon a slight edge over the top teams in the SEC.
All right. One last thing before I let you go. Is there a chance that the Group of 5 winner can actually crack the top 4 and get a first round bye?
Sure.
But I mean, how would that work though?
Okay. Boise State continues to win. They win all their games. They're 12-1 with a 3-point last play of the game loss to Oregon. And Boise State right now is what? What are they ranked in the playoff rankings?
I can't remember.
They were in the top 12 somewhere.
Yeah.
I think they were 12. So let's say SMU loses one of its last couple of games and then wins the ACC championship game, and they've got 2 losses.
Okay.
I would think that Boise State, right now, they're ranked above SMU, and if SMU loses another game, that's one way.
Okay, now let me ask you.
It's not likely, but it's possible.
All right, let me ask you. Say it's BYU and Colorado for Big 12 championship, and Colorado wins.
Yep.
Will they leapfrog Colorado then?
Well, they don't have to leapfrog them. They're already ranked ahead of them, for one thing.
Are they? I thought Colorado was in the top 12.
Colorado?
Yeah.
Well, we'll pull it up right here. I do not remember talking at all about Colorado being in the rankings.
Or maybe on
I know they're in the rankings, but let's see here. We'll pull up last week's rankings, which of course our segue would be that we'll be here Tuesday night to analyze the rankings and do a watch party. But here are the college football playoff rankings. Boise State is 12.
Okay.
Colorado is
20. Wow, 20th. So they move up. Did K-State end up losing yesterday?
Kansas State did not play.
Okay, I didn't know because I know Iowa State lost again yesterday. So,
And just to be clear about this comparison between Boise State and these other teams, this is where all these other teams have an advantage because they're going to play better games against better teams, and they're going to be given more credit as they should be. Boise State's going to continue to play teams in the Mountain West. So there are teams that can, if Colorado, despite being 8 spots behind them, if they win their last 2 games of the season, let's see, they're 7-2, they get 3 games left. If they win all of them, I don't know who they play off the top of my head, but they've got to be decent to marginal Big 12 teams and then win a conference championship game against BYU. They will vault way above Boise State. Well, maybe not way above them. They will eclipse Boise State.
All right, now, last thing before this, because I know you got other callers. I'm getting ready for Colts football, but if the Mountain West Championship was to be played tomorrow, who would Boise State play?
We'd have to look at the standings. I don't know. I believe they would play. Let's see.
UNLV again?
We'll see here in 2 seconds. Is that showing on the screen?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Colorado State. Or maybe UNLV.
Yeah. If it was played right now, they'd play Colorado State.
Yep. I was just wondering something like that. All right. No, I didn't know if you got my no, because I sent you a DM last night after the show because I was wanting to really get on there and throw my 2 cents in, but I guess you just would just doing an hour-long post-game show last night, so it never dropped the link. Because the link you dropped last night was for your book. Because I was wanting to call in last night, but you dropped the wrong link.
Yeah, I recognized that, but I dropped the link like 3 other times.
Because I didn't get in there until late and stuff like that. No, I was doing. All right, sir. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Thanks,
forward
Michael.
to the top 25 later this afternoon.
Appreciate it. All right. Let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Of course, Minnesota lost to Rutgers. How did that happen on Saturday? Dave, how you doing?
Well, thank God for the Vikings.
How are the Vikings doing this year?
Oh, really good. Really
Yeah.
good. Surprisingly good. I think they're 6-2. Yeah,
Okay.
6-2.
Okay.
And looking like they'll be playing Jacksonville at home today. So hopefully we get an easy win. It's supposed to be.
The Minnesota Vikings, of course, the greatest franchise in the history of the NFL without a Super Bowl championship.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, about the Gophers, I have something to basically say about the offense. It was just dreadfully bad, especially the running game. You know, I was thinking to myself, my God, why aren't they just like doing end arounds or maybe some jet sweeps just to keep freaking Rutgers off their game, because they know what what the Gophers are going to do. Half the freaking staff in Rutgers used to be on Minnesota staff. You know, just you think they would throw in some a couple key trick plays or something like that just to keep Rutgers on their toes. But no, Minnesota has to play Minnesota football and not, change anything when it comes to the running game, even though you were getting, I think it was an average of 1.8 with the sacks a carry. So, and your running back only had one big running play, And then, we were up going into the fourth quarter, and then our tight end catches the ball, doesn't have a chance to totally secure it, but he does a football move with it.
Yeah,
and
I saw that.
Yeah, fumbles the ball, and then you give them easy field position, and it went all downhill from there.
Yeah.
So, that's the thing that I kind of looked at is Max isn't supposed to be throwing the ball 45 times. I think it was 45 times. And
46.
What?
46.
46. Whoa.
27 of no, you're right. I'm sorry. My eyes are failing. 27 of 45, 262.
Yeah, and I guess I would say probably 3 of those were drops on key plays on third down. But I give it to Nathan. He had one heck of a first half, and then we adjusted and we finally got to him. But we weren't, you give any quarterback that short of a field position, you're asking for trouble on that fumble, and that was just basically it. And like I said, I mean, if your offense is not moving, maybe it's time to do some end around, some jet sweeps, just try to keep them on the toes. And I was like, why are they not doing that? They should have just done it just for this game alone. Show something different, because everybody knows what you're going to do on the other side. They coached under you. I give credit for Rutgers. They're a lot better team than their record actually shows.
Are they really?
Well,
I thought
really.
that their record was a lot better than they were.
Yeah,
That's what I thought.
maybe now. Well, I should say that I give credit for Rutgers. They have now a better chance of going bowling. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well, they played a team that was red hot and came in with 4 consecutive wins, and I had this feeling that it was going to be a close game, and I know that Minnesota's better. I still think that they're better, but they just I only saw the last 10 minutes of the game. The games that I were watching were trash blowouts, and I thought this is a good game, close game at least. And so I checked in for the last 10 minutes just in time to see Minnesota blow it.
Yeah. I was trying to look at all the other games too. Yeah, you were right. There was nothing that was close. Our game was probably the closest of the day games.
Well, this was a noon game, right?
Yeah. Well, I say,
and so,
yeah.
Well, 11 a.m. for you, noon
Yeah.
Eastern. And so Miami, Georgia Tech was a great game. I was watching that, but Ohio State, Purdue was a joke. And there was another game on that was a joke. And so I went to this game.
Yeah, I watched that Miami Georgia Tech game, and I saw at least a bit of it, and I was finally happy to see Miami finally get their comeuppance. They've been coming so close to losing, every dang time, but they finally lost. They finally bit them on the butt, and it's going to be one more loss, and I think they might be out of the playoffs.
Yeah, they might be.
I don't know how many ACC teams will get in, but
they really don't have any quality wins.
Yeah. And their wins that they have are not impressive.
Not too many of them.
Yeah, and I
want the best
Florida
team
State, Notre Dame. My gosh, I never thought Florida State would ever sink so low, but they're going lower and lower every day.
Yeah, at this time last year, they were undefeated and won the ACC in a cakewalk. And 1 year later, I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in the history of college football.
Yeah, never. Normally, when you see a collapse like this would be like they were 8-4 or like 7-5 or something like that. That's like the biggest type of collapse I can think of. But the Beach just basically dominated the whole entire year, and your only win was against who did they beat? Some SBS school?
Cal.
Oh, they beat Cal. Well,
Cal missed 3 field goals that would have won the game.
Oh God, I totally forgot about.
Yeah, they beat
Poor
Cal. They shouldn't have beaten Cal, but they did.
Poor Cal. Cal this year is becoming like Nebraska was like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And when Nebraska went like
Cal should be like 8-1 right now.
Yeah.
They are 5-4, but they won their first conference game against Wake Friday night.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, private school versus private school. No, wait, Cal's not a private school. They just act like a private school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk to you about, you already kind of talked about it, was the Holy War was great today.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it ended this morning, so. But that was one heck of a game, and that's a very questionable call too. Very questionable. You know, he was being held, yeah, but like you said, the quarterback was nowhere close to even looking at him.
No, he was like practically on the ground. Like, I don't know that I've ever seen a game. Maybe I have at some point. We've all watched so much football, but where I watched about the last 4 drives of that game, and Utah, of course, was nursing a lead. They don't have faith in their quarterback, so they weren't getting too crazy, just trying to milk the clock and run out the clock and take advantage of field position. But that last drive for BYU, every drive I saw BYU ran like 3 drives at the end of the game. They were all terrible. They couldn't pass block. Their quarterback was like under siege, getting thrown around every play. And then that final drive, like they couldn't pass block. He's running for his life. He's back in the end zone. It just looked like Utah just had that thing wrapped up. They were completely annihilating BYU up front. And as soon as that call was made, it just completely changed. And BYU starts hitting these passes downfield, and boom, 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 they're in field goal range and win the game.
Yeah, exactly. That's what happens when just the momentum just swung. You know, oh, we have new life. Let's finally, let's do it, guys. You know, the Book of Mormon came through.
Yes, it did. It has a few times this year. They're 10-0.
Yes,
They're
it
9-0.
has.
Yes.
But Mark, well, I'll let you go because you have other callers, and I'm going to get ready for the Vikes. So,
all right, Dave. Enjoy the NFL game.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. Before we take this next call, I want to address this comment on the screen because you guys know at this point that if you write something that's somewhat inaccurate, or sometimes people post things a lot of times that are completely inaccurate, I just want to clarify something here. Easy Money, I don't know what the conversation is in the chat, but he says, why didn't it take y'all so long to start conference championship games? The SEC started that in 1992, long before anyone else. Well, maybe 4 years is a long time, but the Big 12 started championship games in 1996. So I don't know that was like that long, but 1992, 1996 for the Big 12. All right. We got David stopping by.
Yes. Interesting day in college football yesterday, Mark.
Yeah.
I found it to be a couple of teams dancing on the minefield whose fate was finally dealt to them yesterday, i.e. Miami and Georgia. You know, I think it was safe to say that Miami was, I think one college football announcer playing with dynamite the entire year. And now I didn't think it would be Georgia Tech, and I thought maybe they could slide through the rest of this schedule. But I can't say that I'm overly surprised.
Nope.
I do like Haynes King, though, or as our friend Zach Smith called him, Tech Tebow. So, you know.
Really? Yeah.
I found that to be an interesting,
he's
interesting
very much
name.
a poor man's version, but sure.
Yeah.
But he only plays half the time now.
Yeah, I found that to be interesting now with what they're doing with that offense. I liked him early in the year. I thought he looked pretty good.
Yeah, they don't trust him to pass the ball that much, even though he threw 27 touchdowns last year. They bring in this Aaron Shiloh, who's a freshman.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe that's where the Tebow comparison comes into play. Very average passer at best and a really good runner.
Yeah, although Tebow had, average, meaning if you're talking about the best quarterbacks in the country, he's average.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still throwing for like 35 touchdowns, and obviously he had weapons, and the guy played in the NFL. I don't know that there will ever be another quarterback in the history of the NFL. Somebody would have to name somebody, and I challenge anyone to come up with anyone who had as good a record, excuse me, as the starting quarterback in the NFL, who never got a chance again to quarterback an NFL team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, getting Peyton Manning will do that to you.
Well, there were 31 other teams that could have picked him up.
That's true. Whatever happened with the Jets, though? Was he backing up Sanchez there?
No, he's playing tight end.
Oh, that's right. They converted him. After he went to the Jets, I thought I might have been backing up Sanchez.
And my point is not that Tim Tebow was a starting quarterback in the NFL, nor would I have wanted him to be the quarterback for my team. I'm just saying that for one season, I believe his record was 8-5 as a starting quarterback. And
to add to your, he played very well in a playoff game against the Steelers as well.
Yes, he
did throw the ball really well.
Yeah.
All right.
They played the Patriots the next week.
Yes, and then it came crashing down.
45-10.
Yeah, that was bad.
Did.
All right, to the rest of college football, I did want to comment on the SEC. I'm not saying I'm taking a little bit of a victory lap here, Mark, although I got to listen to Uncle Lou talk about the wrap-up of the Ole Miss Georgia game. Boy, wow. Here's the thing with Georgia. I know you did kind of an analysis. I don't know. What did you say? You said Carson Beck is the fifth worst thing on this football team. So what are you saying? Like offensive line, running backs? I mean, if you list the problems that Georgia had, are you saying by position groups, you would come up with four things before you'd get to Carson Beck?
Yeah, and that's without me being somebody who watches every game and covers the team to be able to dissect coaching staff or play calling or anything like that. But their secondary, their offensive line, their running backs were terrible last night.
Yeah,
I didn't really see anything that Carson Beck was doing that wasn't. I wasn't super locked in on the first half, and because of this YouTube TV that annoys me, that says it will let me start the game at the beginning, but it doesn't. Anyway, so I didn't. Actually, did I start the game? Anyway, watch every play of the second half. I don't see where Carson Beck's the issue. Not at least last night.
Well, the thing about it is I think I've watched 5 Georgia games this year. I think it's 5 because I watched Clemson. I watched Texas. I watched pretty much all of Kentucky, and then I watched Florida, and then yesterday would make 5. And out of those 5 games, I think Carson Beck maybe had one good game, what I would define good game out of 5, where I would say he played really well. I think if you were to look at his game log this year and say how many good performances Carson Beck had, and the tough part about it is, Mark, is who were people talking about as one of the 2 best, maybe the best quarterback coming into the season? And I think that's why I think people are also really coming down on him as hard as they are.
Oh, I understand. The expectations that provides the forum for the criticism. Nobody's criticizing Hudson Card at Purdue.
Sure. Yeah.
So I get it. I'm not evaluating the Kentucky game, the Florida game, anything else. I'm just talking about last night. He was not their problem.
Yeah, I mean, their offensive line was really, really bad. And, I thought their defense played okay. But, I really thought after Dart got hurt, though, that Ole Miss might be in trouble because he was kind of limping on the sideline there. And, agree with your Ole Miss, the lovely lady that does the Ole Miss call-in show with you. I think the response drive to that first touchdown was huge for Ole Miss. It just
Oh,
gave
yeah.
them their confidence, and then they went from there. I picked Ole Miss to make the playoff at the beginning of the year. Was kind of leery after that Kentucky and that LSU loss. Still might not make it, but the rest of their schedule, like you had shown, is very, very, obviously looks like a 10-2 type season. But I also go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just thought you were going to make a further comment there, Mark. What I was going to say is, like you were talking about, the entire SEC. Again, I'm not, here to say, but remember my comment to you. I don't think this is your older brother's SEC. I think this SEC is totally up in the air this year. And remember what I asked you when we last spoke on Thursday. I asked you the question, how many teams could Mark Rogers see winning the SEC this year? And I think at that time, you may have said to me 3. On Thursday night.
Yeah, I said Texas, Georgia, Alabama.
You said maybe Alabama, I think, but okay.
Well, because they weren't in position to. But if you're just talking about how good I think teams are, I picked Alabama to go to the national championship game, and I don't really feel that much differently or view them that much differently than I did in August. So yeah, I don't remember exactly how I made a category of like they're in position and I think they're good enough versus they're not necessarily in position, but I think they're good enough. It was kind of a Georgia, Texas, Tennessee category, and then an Alabama, Texas A&M, Ole Miss category.
Okay. I mean, right now, there you go. There's the question to you one more time. How many teams could you see winning this conference?
Again, in terms of who's good enough to win the conference or who's in position based on the standings.
Bottom line, Mark Rogers wouldn't be shocked. He gives them a decent percentage and chance to win it.
Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, Tennessee. Did I miss somebody? No. I will say that I would be surprised if Texas A&M, even though they're in position, I think they're a good team, but I would be a little bit surprised that they can win an SEC championship game. Texas A&M, LSU, Missouri, out of the contenders, out of the teams that are mathematically in position, those are the 3 that would surprise me.
Yeah, I would say that I just want to make a comment too on Alabama LSU because I did. Did you watch pretty much the entire game, Mark, or were you?
Yes.
Okay. I was, the more that game unfolded, and I bet the game late. I took Alabama because the more and more I thought about LSU is. I thought about that LSU, and not that Alabama didn't have their own problems, but remember how earlier in the year we talked about LSU's, charmed existence a little bit, during the season, and the only thing that gave me pause was where the game was played. But the more and more I thought about it, I was not buying LSU's defense necessarily coming in, and then I had some questions about Nussmeier coming in, and the more I thought about it, I thought Milroe, I was like, I trust Milroe more than I trust Nussmeier. And, even though I have some questions about Alabama, I think they win this game. Now, again, I didn't expect them to blow them out, but maybe looking back on the way LSU was playing earlier in the year, maybe we shouldn't be so surprised.
Yeah, I'm surprised by how dominant the game was, but I didn't even give that game 3 seconds of thought. I just check Alabama, cover, check. I thought they'd win probably 34-20. I thought they'd win by 2 touchdowns. It would be an entertaining game that was still hanging in the balance with 10 minutes left, and Alabama would put it away, that type of game. I didn't think that they were so much better. They were better in every conceivable facet of that game. Yep.
You think Brian Kelly's fake Southern accent will wear even thinner down on the bayou now, Mark, going forward?
They would have to be pretty disgruntled. Every LSU person that I talked to, and this is before they lost 3 games. This is maybe after 1 loss this year, after the USC game. talks like everybody loves Brian Kelly and they're fine and they understand that he's building a program. But in today's college football, I know he inherited a less than LSU roster, but it was not depleted to the likes of other schools. And what has he really done to improve this team? Nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting, like trajectory with him, Mark. I thought first year, solid year. He gets to the SEC title game. He had that big win over Alabama at home 2 years ago. You think, okay, by year number 3. Now, I think yet last year, we're going to look back, especially when you look at the NFL right now, and what a wasted season it was to have Jaden Daniels and those NFL wide receivers and piss it away because you just couldn't put together a halfway decent defense last year.
That's exactly right.
I mean, if you just put together a halfway decent defense, especially once you see what Daniels and then Thomas and Neighbors are doing in the NFL right now, I mean, you got to be, as an LSU fan, I mean, wow.
And then you have to be questioning their defensive game plan last night when Alabama just basically beat them doing the same thing over and over and over. And Alabama does it extremely well. And Kalen DeBoer is an exceptional offensive coach. And I find it interesting the way they use their running backs to be lead blockers for Milroe. And obviously they use them as decoys and they fake to them a lot. And then Milroe's obviously in many of those cases making the decision, but a lot of that is just him taking a direct snap and running around the end and them sealing the edge and then he's gone.
Yeah.
And they didn't throw the ball downfield. They didn't run the ball with the running backs. They ran it 21 times with the 2 running backs, and they averaged less than 3 yards per carry. That was Milroe running the ball down their throats to win that game.
Yeah, I know Alabama fans probably came down really hard on DeBoer after the bad Vandy loss, but going forward, I like DeBoer a lot there. I mean, obviously, it is what it is. You're following the greatest coach in the history of college football, but the bottom line is the man is a good football coach. I mean, to replace anybody for Nick Saban, you're always going to pale in comparison. But the bottom line is, if I'm describing Kalen DeBoer and my opinion of him, I would say good to really good football coach, Mark.
Oh, I think he's one of the 5 to 10 best.
Yeah, agreed. On to the Big Ten. Was happy to see the scumbags lose. Was not so happy I didn't get my bet in, even though I brought the the over down and the line down to like 7.5. They chose to try and play with a little bit of pride in the second half. How cute of them. But, boy, the way Davis Warren still continues to miss open receivers and just be an awful, awful quarterback, by the way. I will say, just watching Indiana, which is kind of the bigger picture, being an Ohio State fan here, I like that team. I mean, you can see what people say in watching them. They scheme some nice things up offensively. I like the quarterback. I think their skill is pretty good. Defensively, I still maybe have some questions, especially if they meet a live offense with skill and obviously, solid quarterback play, which they're going to meet in a couple of weeks. But, I just think, what people say is absolutely true. They're well coached. I think the quarterback play is really good. And I think the skill is just very solid. Maybe I haven't always heard your takeaways about Indiana. I'm surprised I haven't so far, Mark, but thoughts?
Well, I would agree with everything that you just stated. I do think that it should be somewhat concerning that they got completely manhandled for the back half of the last 35 to 40 minutes of that game. They could do nothing offensively. 0. I took down the yardage. The last 25 plays they ran netted 18 yards.
Yeah. But what did they have in the third quarter? Was it 7 yards or something, Mark? Or something?
I think 18 yards in the second half.
Right. Well, I saw like end of third quarter, and I knew it was bad. I mean, they basically won the game on a punt return.
Yeah,
that was their point.
And because Michigan's offense is completely non-existent, they could play like that. So maybe I don't know how much they played like that, protecting a lead versus how much they truly could move the ball. I think there's probably a combination there that they played somewhat conservative because they knew we're playing this team that we could be playing for the next 8 hours that's not going to score 30 points, regardless of what we do. And they're going to do things like run, Philly specials at the 5-yard line if they do move the ball on us, versus that Michigan just figured them out and stopped getting beat over the top as they did on those 2 touchdown plays. And so I do have some concern for Indiana. If we're talking about them as an elite team, if we're talking about them as a good team, they're a really good team.
Right. Yeah, them and Penn State on a neutral field would be a game, wouldn't it, Mark?
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah.
Shoot, them and Penn State in Happy Valley last year was a good game.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Aller had to hit that bomb late to win that game. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, I just think they're a solid team. The only thing with Cignetti, and I'm going to make this comment again. Maybe you feel the same way. Let's say they have their nice 11-1, 10-2 season this year. Maybe they win a playoff game depending on their matchup. And they have what for them would be a dream season. I mean, if they got to the quarterfinals of the playoffs and they went 11-1, that's a dream season in Indiana. Let's just be real. It is. But bottom line, I still wonder what the flip over of the roster is going to be like next year with the transfers being gone. And I'm not saying Cignetti has to repeat this year, next year. I don't think he's going to go Mike Norvell. I don't think it's going to be that bad with the loss of all the personnel. They just go, in the garbage can next year. But can they at least go, let's say 8-4 next year? So if they go 11-1 this year, can they go at least 8-4 next year? My bottom line is obviously I'm saying, can Cignetti do it for back-to-back seasons?
Okay, so you're saying that 8-4 would show you that he's stabilized the program, he's running a good ship, and they've been able to back up what they did this year.
Yep, and bingo is his name-o. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that would impress me because they're not going to luck into the kind of schedule that they have. Who knows if they've scheduled anybody out of conference with a pulse next year. 8-4 would prove to me that he is continuing. Not that I'm not impressed with what he's doing right now. And the guy humors me. He amuses me.
He's an interesting guy.
Like after the game, they're talking to him, and I haven't heard him speak that much, but it's just funny to hear him talk. I don't even know how to categorize him. He's some combination of kind of surly, sarcastic, matter of fact. It's just funny.
Well, I'll say this too. He's got like a no-nonsense kind of edge to him, which I like, and I think is always appealing in a football coach.
Yeah,
that no-nonsense, no BS kind of way about him. You picked that up too?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think that's likable and comes across well to his players.
Yeah.
Penn State, by the way, just a real comment. Wouldn't you know, I take Washington in a week to keep to within 13.5, and Penn State blows them out.
Oh yeah, you should have taken not that I should be doling out betting advice this year, but I was so close, as we always are, to having really good weeks. But I went 10-9 against the spread yesterday, so I would have told you that was just kind of a check mark, like move on, like Penn State's covering this by. You wouldn't be surprised if Penn State would have at least only won by 10? You think that's reasonable? I thought Washington was decent, and Penn State doesn't seem like a blowout team. They're beating Bowling Green close, and they're beating some of these other teams close. If Penn State would have won by 10, would I have been surprised? No, but I thought that they were going to win by what they won by.
Okay. Yeah, I thought 13.5 was a little high, but I digress. I would say that, by the way, record. Yeah, I went 2-2 yesterday. Yeah, thank you, Missouri, by the way. Helped me out against Oklahoma. So that was good.
I also took Missouri 3.5 points, and I also picked them to win the game outright.
One other observation, because I did catch the tail end of the Colorado Texas Tech game. Did you get a chance to peek in at that?
I did not see one play of that game.
Okay. Yeah, I caught it because obviously Ole Miss Georgia was over with, and the scumbags in Indiana was over with. So I found that game interesting. Let me ask you this question. How much is Colorado improved from early in the year, and how much are they just benefiting from maybe playing a Big 12 kind of schedule? If you've had some thoughts on that.
Sure. Well, I got to think, and you're talking to a guy that's not seen Colorado for as much Colorado as I watched last year. I got into the whole got to watch Colorado for a little while early in the season. I saw them a lot. I'm trying to think if I've seen them play at all this year. Who have they played? I didn't see them play Nebraska.
Okay.
I've not seen any of this. Zero. I've not sat down and watched them. Now, I watched a highlight here and there, which what can you tell from a highlight?
Sure.
But based on what I know of the Big 12, the Big 12 is not a good conference. But they couldn't have played like they did last year or early this season and translate that into a team that's going to go to the Big 12 championship game. So they must have improved pretty considerably.
Yeah. Here's the thing, Mark. I mean, I've always said, and maybe this is true with a lot of conferences and a lot of areas of football, that as long as you have a quarterback and a couple of good receivers, you can beat anybody. You know what I mean? Or you got a chance against anybody, basically, is my theory. But you especially got a chance in the Big 12. You know what I mean? And that's kind of my point. I did watch the Nebraska game earlier in the year. And by the way, maybe that Nebraska defensive line, which kind of gave my Buckeyes all that they can handle, isn't all that bad. Because remember how people were talking about how bad their offensive line play was after that game, and Shador just getting thumped. But yeah, I mean, I that's what I was wondering. I go back and forth whether it's the Big 12 schedule or, maybe they have just improved that much.
Colorado, I would think, if they were given a balanced Big 10 schedule, meaning they weren't given Rutgers' schedule, who plays no one in the Big 10 that's any good, or they weren't given some extremely hard, like they played all the best teams, a balanced Big 10 schedule, I would think that they would go 4-5.
Okay. That's interesting. Hey, what are your thoughts on the shakeup we're going to have this week with the playoff, Mark? I think it's interesting. I think we're getting to the good stuff here going forward. I know Mark has been a little bit on this college football season, but I think we're going to close with some controversies. I think we're heading in the right direction to a really interesting end to this college football season. Mark, what do you think?
Look at what's happening in the SEC right now.
Mm-hmm.
Draw me a conclusion to the SEC, David. So tell me, out of the key games in the SEC, and again, you're going to miss some, but
right.
How do you expect it to play out? And then we'll take that conclusion and try to put it into the playoffs, because the Big Ten's pretty well set. Not
right.
that it's set like Ohio State can't get upset by Indiana take their place, but Indiana would just take their place. Like, we pretty much know who's going to make the playoffs from the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And then we don't know about a second team possibly from the Big 12 or the ACC, but it doesn't look good. But the SEC, Texas A&M, Tennessee with 1 loss, all these other teams with 2 losses. LSU's got 3 losses, so they're seemingly out of the playoff, but they're still in the possibility of playing for an SEC championship game. So how do you think this is going to play out in regards to records in the SEC?
Well, here's I mean, the next big domino is in Athens next week.
Yes.
With Tennessee going to Athens next week. And remember, 2 years ago, they went to Athens and it didn't end well. Although I'm in complete agreement. This ain't that Georgia team, from 2 years ago. It's just not. But, I was skeptical of Tennessee earlier in the year. Maybe I was skeptical because I heard like Colin Cowherd and Joel Klatt talking Tennessee up as like a national championship team. And I wasn't willing to cross that bridge, By the way, are you?
They'd be on the outside of my inner circle of national championship contenders. I'd put them in the top 8.
Okay, because that game is just huge for me next week. If Tennessee wins, then I think we definitely get some clarity here. You know what I mean, going forward, because I think Georgia's obviously completely done, and we can just back them out at that point. So that's huge. Alabama's got Iron Bowl, and what else left, Mark?
Oklahoma.
Okay, yeah, they're going to win both those games. They're going to win both of those games. So we know we have a pretty good feeling Ole Miss is going 10-2. We have a pretty good feeling that Alabama is going to go 10-2. So, yeah, I want to see what happens at Athens next week. Because honestly, if Georgia wins next week, then wow.
Let's say Georgia wins.
Yeah.
They finish 10-2. Tennessee finishes 10-2.
Yep.
We got the other two teams you just mentioned.
Right.
Texas, they've got one loss right now. They've got a game against Texas A&M. That's the other big domino.
Yes.
Texas A&M.
Yeah, no, I was going to get to that. I had a lot of the other mess I wanted to clarify first before I got to Texas, Mark. Yeah, I don't know. Texas and Texas A&M is going to be interesting. I watched I don't know why. Well, I was watching the Buckeyes, but we had 2 blowouts at noon yesterday. It wasn't good. Texas and Florida. Wow. Billy Napier. Just please. I mean, seriously.
Well, he's playing with a third-string walk-on quarterback, and all 4 of his cornerbacks are injured.
Yeah, but if Lagway was playing yesterday, that still would have been ugly, Mark. I don't know.
But you're missing 4 cornerbacks against one of the best wide receiver groups you're missing 4 cornerbacks.
So we're saying that's a good game for Quinn Ewers to get right and start to look like Quinn Ewers maybe we saw earlier in the year.
Yeah, I like you. I checked out of that game early. It was one of my 2 games that I was watching. Quickly replaced that with the Miami Georgia Tech game. But so yeah, in this scenario that we're putting together, even if we don't go to the extreme of trying to line everybody up at 10-2, like the complete log jam, that's possible. That's extremely possible.
A&M beats Texas. And Georgia beats Tennessee next week.
All it takes.
And then we're looking at
hold serve. Yeah.
Right.
On upsets. But
Mark Rogers is rooting for this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. This is the king of chaos, ladies and gentlemen.
Before the SEC championship game, Texas A&M, Bama, Ole Miss, Missouri, Georgia, Tennessee are all 10-2.
Yeah.
7 teams.
You cutting a video this week? You doing situation scenarios? Yeah. Okay. Earn your money this week there, Rogers.
Well, it's almost impossible to run through scenarios because you have to run through, but you can at least line up if there are tiebreakers that have to be met. You know, that conference winning percentage is one that comes into play.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or common opponents.
Yeah, that's right. Because we got a lot of people, like if it all ends up at 10-2, wow. I want to see you do diagrams and everything on that.
That's awesome. That's all we need. We need those 2 games, and then we need no upsets.
Get those legal pads ready, Mark.
Oh yeah, they're always here. They're standing by.
All right, my friend. Well, as always, it's a pleasure to get together with you on Sundays and talk college football. I don't get to watch the Clowns today, so today is a good day.
Gotcha. I'm going to let you go, watch the NFL, and I'm going to address this comment on the screen. I don't know if you can see this or you remember.
Yeah, I took a little bit of it. The Marcus Allen fumbles inside the 5-yard line.
Well, yeah, I'm getting past that. So this is in response, I believe, to me saying that Tim Tebow come up with another quarterback who never got another chance, who had as good a record as Tim Tebow. And I'm not defending. Again, Tim Tebow completed like 47% of his passes in the NFL. I'm just saying that the combination of the defense he played with at Denver and his propensity to come up with one drive at the end of the game and run around and make something happen for that one season was just kind of magic. And then he never got another chance. Yeah. And I can't really relate that. And I can't relate that to Mark Wilson, who this gentleman, our buddy here, Lewis, is saying went 21-5 with the Raiders. I'm not seeing 21-5 here. I just pulled up his record as a starting quarterback. It's not 21-5.
Yeah, that was in a period of time in the 80s where the Raiders were going through a lot of different quarterbacks. I think post Jim Plunkett. I think.
Yeah. You had Mark Wilson, you had Vince Evans. You had
Schrader came in like late
Jay
80s.
Schrader, of course, who played in the a championship game.
Right.
And then you had oh shoot, his name just left me. Jeff Hostetler.
Yeah.
But that would have been after his Giants career. So we're moving into the 90s.
The 90s, yeah.
Still.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Well, I got to get running. Enjoy your day of pro football, and we'll get back together this week and talk some college football.
Thanks, David.
Take care now.
I don't know if I will have a day of NFL. I've not had a day of the NFL this year. I typically forget that they're even playing anymore. And in my former life, 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday was hallowed ground. Like, get out of my way. I've got to be home. I was always annoyed and angered by lunch dates after church, that sort of thing. But anymore, man, I kind of force myself late in the day on Sunday to say, you know what? I'm going to make myself just check out the scores, look at a couple highlights, see what's going on in the NFL. Now, I usually check in when my NFL interest waned in the last 5 or 6 years. There came a point where I at least at about 3:30 thought, you know what? I want to see the bewitching hour, the 3:30 to 4:30 range, when all the NFL games are coming down to the wire, and almost all of them are coming down to the wire. Because that's some entertaining football. But even then, that's not keeping my interest. So I'm just curious about this Mark Wilson, which there was a time in my life when I probably could have recited most of these statistics. But in 1981, that was post Super Bowl in 1980. And that's when Jim Plunkett got hurt. He went 5-4 with the Raiders. And then in 82, the Raiders tied for the best record in the NFL at 8-1. He did not play. And then we pick it up in 83. They won the Super Bowl that year. He went 2-1. So then he starts to become the starting quarterback here in 84. That's the year after Plunkett won the Super Bowl. I'm assuming Plunkett got hurt and Mark Wilson went 6-4. So then by 1985, he becomes the starting quarterback. He goes 11-2. And they go 12-4 and lose to the Patriots in the playoffs. And then in 86, he goes 5-3. And then in 87, he's 2-5. So I'm not seeing his 21-5 run. But I get your point. They brought in some other quarterbacks to challenge him, Jay Schrader in particular. Interesting. Mark Wilson. 86 touchdowns, 102 picks, 52% completion percentage. Those were not even good numbers in the mid-80s. I just remember the guy threw the ball much like Jim Plunkett did. Jim Plunkett threw the ball like a shot put. Or no, he threw it like a javelin. He threw the ball like a javelin. And Mark Wilson also had an odd, very mechanical delivery. Of course, the BYU quarterback. All right. We do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. And yes, I would take your comments and questions there in the chat, but I don't see any. So I think we have wrapped it up for a Sunday. Appreciate you being here. The top 25 that actually makes sense will be on its way.